assuming you've gone through a phase of rudiments with metronome, etc., most drummers have. I've found recently that at 200 BPMs, for instance, I can pretty cleanly play paradiddles, the double paradiddles, and back and forth. But the second I go to 205, for instance, it starts getting sloppy. And while I'll likely push that sort of out of my own curiosity, and I'm not even sure it'll be applicable for anything beyond that, is that something that you've experienced while maybe pursuing technique, speed, etc., that you've ultimately asked yourself, how far are you willing to go, considering that you may not even really use it that much? You know?
That's also a really great question. I don't practice the kind of drumming that some people might call athletic drumming or
Right.
circus drumming or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do love chops. Believe me, I love chops, and I love, speed. And what I love more than that is efficiency, tone,
Mm-hmm.
musicality.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever I practice, I'll push it. I'll push it hard and I'll push it far. But the minute it starts to sound like really crappy, and I think I could never use this on a session or a gig because it's starting to sound crappy,
Yeah.
then I back it down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't play anything to the point where it doesn't sound good anymore or seamless or even.
Mm-hmm.
Even is a big thing for me, like consistent and even.
Sure.
But I'll make note of that. I'm like, oh, I like this thing, but once I get to 140, I might have to switch to this other thing because this, A isn't working at that tempo. And I will try to push the boundaries of those tempos over time, but it's not my main goal. My main goal is to make sure things sound really good. So if I have to do it between two hands, or I can do it with one hand, or I do it in singles, or I do it with doubles, I make those decisions based on whatever sounds the best at that tempo. I very seldomly just try to force things to work
Mm-hmm.
beyond their limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are certain times where you have to make exceptions, like an up-tempo ride pattern. Unfortunately, you have to just shed that. You have to shed it and get it faster and faster if
Right.
you're going to play. Because you can't just say, well, I'm going to do it with two hands. Ting, tick, ting, tick, ting. No one's going to play a jazz ride pattern with two hands, right? Ting, tick, ting, tick, ting, tick, ting, right, left, right, left, right, left. No, you have to play one with one hand. Ting, tick, ting, tick, ting, ting, tick, ting, tick, ting, 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 tick, ting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something you do. If you want to get good at that, you need to practice, and get the hands going, get the muscles, get the bounce, get the wrist flick, whatever combination of things you have to get going to make that sound good at really fast tempos.
Yeah.
But a lot of other forms of drumming, you don't have to do that. You just have to come up with a pattern that sounds good
Mm-hmm.
and sounds consistent and, with good tone. So there's no reason to crush extra notes in there if it's going to make the groove sound worse.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great distinction. I've asked myself that question itself. It's like, if it's sounding this bad and it's already most likely beyond BPM wise what I would be playing in the first place, other than for my own curiosity, I don't know that it's the most applicable thing to even be spending that much time upon,
Okay, yeah, another good example. You had a paradiddle example, but here's another good example on the drum set would be you're doing a kick, snare, hi-hat groove, and the hi-hat is right hand 16th notes. Like that,
Mhm.
right? And then the artist is like, let's do it like 8 BPM faster. You're like, oh, okay. That's pretty cool. How about like, can we do it at like, I don't know, let's do it, bump it up another 6 BPM.
Right.
You're like, oh my God. At a certain point, my right hand, it could still play it, but it's starting to sound shitty.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should switch this to right, left, alternating hi-hat part.
Right.
My ego might say, no, you got to muscle this out. You got,
Mm-hmm.
But part of me would say, what's more important is that I play the song well, so the artist likes the drum pattern at this tempo. Not that I proved to myself that I could bust these 16 notes out with one hand. That's, maybe that's something I could work on over time in the practice room. But in this moment, what's more important is to play the pattern and make it sound good today, so I don't get fired. And that might mean switching to a right, left, alternating hi-hat pattern,
Mm-hmm.
which makes everybody happy. That's an example.
Exactly. Yeah, another guy that I've spoken to, and Todd Zuckerman had a really great thing on one of his Drumeo videos where he talked about exactly what you're talking about and being able to speed those 16th notes up just with the right hand if you want that particular accent alternating, upbeat, downbeat on the
Mm-hmm.
corner of the hi-hat and up. And of course, because he's just such an amazing drummer, he had a really incredible example. And if there's anyone listening to this that's curious about that, check out him during that, talking about that specifically. And he has a great technique for it to be able to get that higher at higher BPMs without burning your hand out and still have the dynamic that you're looking for that might be more consistent with playing it with one hand. So there is that out there.
Yeah.
That would be an example of maybe more of a musical pursuit in increasing, technique with higher BPMs. And he's great with stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Todd is a sweetheart, and he's a monster drummer, and I love him.
He's amazing.
He's slated to be next on the list for Drummer Flush Drummer, but we'll see what happens. But I met him years ago at the NAMM show. We just bumped into each other. I didn't know him really. He's like, "Hey man, here's my DVD," and I'm like, "Oh cool." And I took the DVD, went home, watched it, and was like, this guy is a monster. So I found him on the internet. I wrote an email saying, dude, I love your drumming. You are a monster player.
Monster.
So we've been friends ever since. He's really great, really great. And yeah, I'll check out that thing. Another good thing when you're talking about, Porcaro had a great right hand on the hi-hat,
Jesus.
but every single Brazilian drummer I know can play wicked amounts of fast right-hand notes. It's in the culture. Like they can play sambas like
right
with their right hand, just and then the hi-hat or the ride endlessly without breaking, without adding rests or syncopations. Just it's. And I have a friend of mine in LA named Leo Costa, who's a great Brazilian drummer. And I asked him one day, I'm like, dude, is it just practice, or you got to be born with it, or what's the deal? He's like, you know what? It's just like the same way you would play boom pa here in the U.S. We grew up doing that, like that, and your hand just gets used to that kind of muscle twitch to be able to do that effortlessly without burning out. Because you watch like heavy Brazilian samba drum kit players, and their right hand is mind-blowing what they can do for how long they can do it without slowing down, without burning out. I forgot his name. Edu Ribeiro, I think his name is. Eduardo Ribeiro, I think is a guy who's like just killer. And there's so many guys who have that same technique down where they can just play on the ride or a closed hi-hat endlessly.
Yeah.
And you're like, where are those chops coming from?
Seriously, man. Oh,
definitely worth checking out.